Before Russia invaded Ukraine, they were a collection of football ultras, right-wing agitators, and veterans of the notorious Azov Battalion. Now, they are crack soldiers and part of one of Ukraine's best fighting units, called Kraken. Putin's propagandists call them neo-Nazis, and they have faced accusations of harbouring far-right fanatics and war crimes, all of which they deny. But to ordinary citizens, this controversial unit are simply the Defenders of Kharkiv, who spearheaded Ukraine's stunning counterattack out of the city last year. They are the guardians of Bakhmut, where they helped keep the road of life open, and they are veterans of shadowy undercover operations from the south of Ukraine all the way to the Russian border in the north. They have been praised by President Zelensky himself and serve under the direct command of Kyrylo Budanov, head of Ukrainian military intelligence. This is the story of Kraken's rise from obscurity to become one of the country's best-known fighting units. When Vladimir Putin ordered his troops into Ukraine on February the 24th last year, he caught Kiev, world leaders, and even his own generals off guard. But on the football terraces and in the sports bars of Kharkiv, they knew what was coming. In Ukraine's second-largest city, which sits just 20 miles from the Russian border, a group of men led by right-wing leader Konstantin Nemechev had been preparing for this moment for at least 6 months. Nemechev, a veteran and a political disciple of controversial Azov Battalion founder Andrei Beletsky, suspected a war was brewing and had been offering training to those keen on fighting. The group was made up of veterans who fought from Afghanistan to the Caucasus, hooligans linked to Kharkiv Metallist FC, club bouncers, and self-described gym rats. When the war began, Nemechev rallied his troops via telegram and marched hundreds of them to the north of the city, where they helped the 92nd Brigade fight off the Kremlin's forces. Those first few days were chaos, according to those who survived it, but the unit proved effective despite lacking battlefield experience. They stopped Putin's troops crossing Kharkiv's ring road and then drove 36 Russian Special Forces soldiers out of a school they had captured within the city limits. Russia was quick to cotton on, and on March the 1st, they hit the Kharkiv administrative building, where Kraken had set up a temporary HQ with 2 Caliber cruise missiles. 29 people were killed, and Nemechev has no doubt that they were deliberately targeting his unit. Kraken had caught the Kremlin's attention. Over the next several months, Russian troops trying and failing to seize Ukraine's second-largest city became more than familiar with Nemechev and his men. Following their success inside Kharkiv itself, the unit led an assault on the nearby village of Velivka. Still operating off the books, the men of Kraken rode into battle in civilian pickup trucks and SUVs, wielding a handful of assault rifles and rocket launchers. But what they lacked in equipment, they made up for in boldness. They held the village, even after it came under attack by Russian jets and helicopters, killing an estimated 80 soldiers and capturing another 30 in the process. Then came the liberation of another nearby settlement, Ruska Lozova, in which Major General Budanov fought alongside Kraken soldiers. It was around this time that Kraken was officially incorporated into Ukraine's Military Intelligence Directorate as a reconnaissance and sabotage unit under Budanov's personal command. Having distinguished themselves in defending Kharkiv, it is perhaps no surprise that Kraken was in the vanguard when a counterattack was launched out of the city last summer. By this time, the unit was riding into battle on captured Russian tanks and armoured vehicles, and was instrumental in capturing the city of Balaklia in the opening days of the assault. A commander within the unit, known only as Vito, was filmed tearing down a Russian flag from the top of a building in the city centre and declaring, "Mr. President, your order has been executed." Kraken then helped to sow chaos in the Russian ranks by capturing and disabling a nearby power plant, causing Putin's panicked troops to flee in disarray. Having retaken thousands of square miles of territory in just a few days, exhausted Kraken troops were also instrumental in taking the hugely strategic crossroads city of Kupiansk. In total, Kraken claims to have been involved in the liberation of 20 settlements in Kharkiv last year alone. Since then, Kraken has been deployed right across the 600-mile front line from the Russian border to the south of Ukraine. In October last year, Kraken soldiers were said to be among a 600-strong Special Forces team that launched a failed attack on the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant near Kherson. In January, President Zelensky personally praised the unit for fighting in the city of Soledar to the north of Bakhmut against Wagner forces. Kraken was then redeployed to Bakhmut itself and credited with keeping the vital road to life open during February, saving thousands of Ukrainian troops from encirclement. In March, Kraken troops then released footage showing how they had destroyed 2 Russian observation towers on the Russian side of the border in Bryansk, near northern Ukraine. Of course, no unit with a reputation as big as Kraken's can escape controversy. It is often the subject of Russian propaganda reports, which have branded its members neo-Nazis and members of the far right. Putin's media claim Kraken soldiers have tortured and executed civilians and once shot 100 Ukrainian troops for desertion. BBC investigators have raised suspicions that Kraken soldiers were involved in the torture of Russian POWs. Back in March last year, footage emerged of men in Ukrainian military uniforms shooting Russian troops in the legs as they were being questioned. The BBC traced the location of the footage and established that Kraken soldiers were operating in the area at the time. However, French investigators from Le Monde accused another unit, the Slobozhnaya Battalion, of carrying out the attack. Neither team of investigators was able to definitively prove who was involved. For his part, Nemechev has denied all allegations of torture against his men. These days, Kraken is regarded as among Ukraine's elite troops. Budanov has called the regiment one of the most battle-worthy units in Ukraine, and Zelensky has hailed their decisive actions in destroying Russian troops. They no longer recruit from football terraces, but via a specialist process that only a third of applicants pass. Prospective soldiers are forced to endure a test known as the 7 Circles of Hell that involves long marches in full gear and surviving in freezing conditions without food. One commander has even bragged that 3/4 of his men have a degree. As Ukraine prepares for its largest counterattack to date, Kraken is swelling its ranks. While exact troop numbers are unknown, it is thought to be north of 1,000 men. Nobody knows exactly when or where Kiev's forces will strike, but one thing seems certain. Wherever the fighting is at its thickest, that is where Kraken will be found. For more videos like this on the ongoing war in Ukraine, don't forget to like and subscribe to Daily Mail on YouTube.